Mic check, mic check. So I've observed in the uh, previous lives that just gonna mute that. Right. I have observed in the previous lives that sometimes when I'm saying something, the mic seems a little bit uh, low volume. So what I've done right now is I've just increased the gain a little bit. But what I'd like someone to tell me is that they can hear me okay, and then we can give it a go. Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining. What I'd like, yeah, it seems like I can hear myself on my phone, which is currently running the live as well. So I'm just gonna keep that there just to make sure everything's going smoothly and hopefully the phone doesn't fall. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. And today we are gonna try and do something a little bit exciting. Let me just open that window and bring it to the main screen. So what you can see in this screen, hopefully, is wheel of names. So if you saw the previous video that I posted, which was the car tutorial series, I'd sort of given a little bit of a showcase of this, sorry, a teaser of this wheel of names situation that we're going to do. And essentially, what we have here is a couple of names, couple of vehicles, models that was recommended by some of you in throughout various different videos, various different lives and posts, and on Instagram as well. So thank you so much for sending in your suggestions. Some very interesting things we have here, and I was getting a bit confused as to which one should we make today. Which one should we make today? And that can get a bit overwhelming. So what I did was, just to make it a little bit more interesting, is to add all these names in the spinner, and what we'll do is we let the spinner decide which one we're going to model today. Okay, and for those of you who've already joined, thank you so much. Would love to know if you can hear me and see me all right. And the names that we have here, again, as I said, some of them are actually incredibly interesting. However, some of these I will take away before we even spin the wheel. And this is because either they are too similar to something that I've already done, either in a previous live or a tutorial, or they're something that I don't feel comfortable with doing, right? So if we start in about 2 minutes, we'll just wait for a couple more people to join. And what we'll do is I've put up all the names here that have been recommended to me, but in front of you guys, I want to start taking a few of them out, and I'll explain why I'm doing that. In the meantime, if there are people who want to put in some more names while we're still here, please, you can go ahead and do that. We can add some models live onto this wheel as well. So we'll just give it a minute. It is getting a bit hot. I'm just going to open the window, and if you hear train sounds, that's because I live right next to a railway track. Give me 1 second. Okay. Again, if people are joining, please do let me know if you can hear me all right. Okay. Right. So let's get started. Thank you everyone. Very kind. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll start from the bottom, and I will go over one by one if we're eliminating any of these. So the Boeing 727 was recommended by somebody. I don't have their name on my sheet here, but this one I want to take out, and this is because the 727 is quite similar to the Boeing 737, and I've already done the 737 in the tutorial series, and I've also done a Airbus A350 a while back. It was on a sort of time lapse video. So because this is quite similar to something I've already done, I'm going to take that out just to keep things a little bit interesting today. However, if you really want to see me make a Boeing 727 specifically, let me know again in the comments and I'll do it eventually, but not in this video, okay? Just to keep it a little bit more interesting. B-Rat Dominator, hello, welcome, thank you for joining us. Okay, so I'm going to take away Boeing 727. All right, so that's taken one out. Then we have the Shrike Commander 500S, which is a little bit different from the usual stuff that I've been showing on the channel. However, the individual that requested this also gave me access to a few more resources, which I am not yet sure are available for the public to see. So just to not take that risk, I'm going to remove this one for now. And as soon as I get a confirmation from them, I'll add it back to the wheel in another live video. All right, if that sounds okay, I'm just gonna remove that. Okay, so we've got now the Falcon 6X. Now this one I actually made for somebody, and I've already done this one. So the previous live was actually about the Falcon 6X. And if that's something you're interested in watching, you can go ahead and watch the previous live. It should be available on my YouTube channel. So I'm gonna remove the Falcon 6X. Okay, the next one is Fallout Pistol. Now, this was an interesting one. No one's ever requested me to make weapons. I personally don't feel comfortable doing that, and so therefore I will remove this. However, if that individual has any other recommendations from the Fallout series that you might be interested in seeing, so that may be a vehicle of some sort, I'd be happy to give that a try. But I don't feel comfortable doing weapons, so I will remove that. Okay, then we have the Aston Martin DB11, which I think is an absolutely stunning car. I'm going to keep this one in, even though it is similar to what I'm doing with the car series with the Mercedes. I've recently really started liking Aston Martins. I've always been an Italian car boy, so Ferraris are my thing. But more recently, I've been really starting to appreciate Aston Martins and Jaguars, and more recently also Porsches. So I'm going to keep the Aston Martin DB11 in. Gulfstream G650. Now with this one, I am a little bit confused, and the reason is because if you saw my wallpaper, that is a Gulfstream 7500, and this is the airport scene where the Gulfstream was featured. And because the Gulfstream 650 is, again, quite similar to the 750, I think to keep things interesting, I will remove that. Again, because the modeling techniques will be very similar to what I've already done. Okay, so now we have the Aston Martin DB11, which we are going ahead with. The A10 Warthog, which is an absolutely beast of an aircraft. I've flown that a couple of times in Ace Combat, or Pleasure to Fly. So we'll keep that one in because it is different from things that I have shown on the channel before. And the most different of them all are the heels. And it's interesting, some of you may be asking, why are there heels in this when most of the time you do vehicles? And the reason is because this was not recommended, this was actually asked as a commission by somebody. And so I had done an hour or two worth of work on trying to figure out how to model these heels. We didn't go ahead with actually doing the commission, but I thought it was still interesting, and I told them that if I had time, I'd try and make a video for heels anyways. So I've put those in, and if that comes up, so be it. It'll still be interesting to watch because the way we model the heel on any kind of shoe is quite different from all the vehicles that we usually design. So we use T-splines still, but we use a slightly different method of doing that. Okay, and then up again, we have the F20 Tiger Shark, which was recommended by Eric Schmidt in one of the earlier videos. So I've put that in again because we have, it's an interesting one. It is a fighter aircraft, and we'll leave that one in. So it should be an interesting one to do. Then we have the German 190D, so the FW 190D. I believe this is from the World War or World War II. So it is slightly different from what I have shown here, but I've actually created a very similar model in the past. So I'm going to leave that in here as well. Now, for those of you who are watching and who are live, which one of these do you would you actually like me to see? Would Sorry, I'm getting distracted by seagulls. Um, which one of these would you want me to build? All right, because I'm curious to see what people here would want me to do. But today we're gonna let the wheel decide, and I'll wait for a minute just to get some responses because it feels like my PC is lagging quite a bit because we've got the streaming and Photoshop and stuff open. Um, and even on my phone, it seems like there's a bit of a lag for what is actually coming out live. So I'm gonna just wait for a second. Okay, so yeah, there is a bit of lag, but I can see that some responses are coming in, which is nice. Um, so B Rad Dominator says F20 Tiger Shark. B Rad Dominator, if there's is there any specific reason why you'd like to see that? And Triple M Music, which is one of my friends, Mimli, says Dabba. Now, for context, this is actually a bit of a fun story. Mimli, I'm going to share that story if it's okay with you. It's actually quite a wholesome story, so I'm just gonna ask for her permission. Um, so when she says dabba, dabba is basically a word in Hindi which means box. Um, yes, please go ahead. Okay, sweet. Thank you, Mimli. So dabba means box in Hindi, and when I started making these tutorials, I had shown some of the stuff to her beforehand, and she said, "Oh, can you make?" Can you make me the Tata Sumo, which is a car in India, which I remember from my childhood days, and it basically just looks like a box. So I started calling it a box, and she sort of took to that, and she's been bugging me for the past 3 years to make our dabba. So Mimli, I think in the next live, I will put the dabba in the wheel, and then we'll also let the wheel decide which one to do. So BRAD Dominator says, I would like to see how you go about designing a canopy. That's actually interesting because I haven't done that. And when I was looking at the aircraft beforehand, that is something I was actually thinking about. How would I go about designing that top bit there? Okay, so we've got a couple of people, which is nice. So I'm going to go ahead and spin the wheel. Fingers crossed. I'm actually excited. Whatever comes up, I have to do it, right? So we're going to let the wheel decide. Emily says, oh my God, thank you. Yeah, I think her wishes are coming true after 3 years. All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Let's see, let's see, let's see. Okay, that was a pretty close call between the FW190D and the F20 Tiger Shark. So B-Rat Dominator, you actually got your wish, which is quite cool. Look at that. It was at such a it was just at the border, and I was expecting it to go to FW190D, which is something I'm also excited to build. But yeah, B-Rat Dominator, you got your wish. F20 Tiger Shark it is. So what I'm gonna have to do is go ahead and look at some blueprints for F20 Tiger Shark. So let me just open that. So F20 Tiger Shark. I'm quite excited. I don't think I've ever built something like this before. So Beer Down is nice. I hope you've not hacked into their website to make the... You rigged the wheel. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I'm gonna bring in this piece now. And for those of you watching who don't know what the F20 Tiger Shark is, it's actually, let me remove the blueprint section first. Let's just have a look at this aircraft here. So it's designed by Northrop, I believe. Yep, Northrop F20 Tiger Shark. And it seems like one of those aircraft that would have been around at the same time as MiG-21s, maybe. And the reason why I say that is if we look at the sort of thin, long one engine design, and we've also got a really sharp nose. But Be Right Dominator, if you know more about the F20 Tiger Shark, please do share with us some more insights if you have any. Okay, so one more thing that I'd like to mention here is I want to try and keep this to 2 hours. I don't know if I'll actually keep to it, but I'm going to try and keep it to 2 hours. Just because I think psychologically what happens is every time I think that I have to do a live and it usually goes 3 to 4 hours, that means that I get really exhausted by the end of the day because I would have just come back from work and done 4 hours of live. But I'm telling myself to do it for 2 hours. If it goes a little bit more, that's fine. But yeah, excited to start this. So I'm going to go ahead now and do blueprints. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and... Oh man, these are some stunning designs. I quite enjoy seeing stuff like this. It's called cutaway drawing. And essentially you see the airframe structures as well as everything that goes on inside, which is really, really cool. But yeah, of course, for now, we can't really do much with that. So that's a nice and clean one, but obviously there's not much details going on here, but the resolution is good. So that's one that we can use. If we go to this one, which is the blueprints, and this is obviously a premium one, it's $18.44. And if you don't pay for it, you get a really low quality one. So we can't technically use that. We've got one from here. This one's angled. We can still use it, but it might be a bit tricky to get that right. This one seems to be looking the best so far. So it's of high quality enough that when I crop it into smaller pieces, it can do the trick. Okay, and we've got a nice top view. We've got some details. So that kind of reminds me of the F-15 Eagle, the intakes. Okay, front seems plain enough, and that seems horizontal enough as well. And the reason why I'm doing these checks is sometimes you'll get the blueprints, you're thinking they look good, but then when you actually use them, they're not horizontal or they're not vertical enough. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and just prepare these blueprints in a different screen, and I can go ahead and close all of this because it's taking up some power. So I'm going to go ahead and save image. Let's put it on the desktop for now. I'm going to call this the F20. So it's a GIF image, and I know you can't see what I'm doing, but you will in a moment. So I'm just going to open that file. Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the screen. Wonderful. Cool. So you can see actually it is quite big. Sorry, it's quite small. I'm just going to fit it to the screen, but it's decent enough even on this resolution. So my screen is 4K. And we can see, okay, you can't actually see it, but if I were to bring this up a little bit, you might be able to. You see that's an index file, and that's not really what we want. And I appreciate that you can't see the top of the screen either, but I'm going to try and be quick about this. So all I'm doing is I'm changing this to RGB instead of a normal background. a normal index file, release the background, and I'm just going to now start taking out the blueprints. So let's start with the side view. This is just me sort of, this is just my way of doing it. It may not be the best way of doing it, but it's simple enough for me and it doesn't add too much of time. So there we go. And essentially what I've done is I've tried to encapsulate pretty much only the side blueprint here. Mimli says, I have to go now, but all the best with the rest of the live stream. Enjoy, everyone. Thank you so much, Mimli. Very kind of you. Hopefully actually see you for one of the lives properly. That'll be nice. So actually, this is what I was talking about, where you would have hoped that this line is horizontal, but it's not. And that can actually be quite a tricky thing because you would have matched the blueprints assuming that it's a horizontal line, but it's not. But that's okay. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag one from here. And I'm going to don't worry if you're not really following along right now. I haven't actually made I've not made a very detailed video on this yet, but maybe in the future I might. Because I feel like Photoshop has just the right amount of tools for me to do it. And I'm not even really good at it. I'm not very good at Photoshop, but I know it in just enough to get things done. Cool. There we go. That's nice. So now I'm going to go ahead and save this as a JPG instead of. So I'm going to say side underscore F20. And again, I'm running into one of those problems where depending on what language I've been using to code to do some software stuff, the naming convention changes. So if I'm doing Java or if I'm doing React, then or Python, the naming convention changes a little bit. So currently I'm calling this F20 underscore something, which is quite a Python thing to do. Okay, so we're happy with the side view. I'm gonna just undo till we come back to, there we go. Let's fit in screen now, and I'm gonna now extract the top view. All right, so select inverse, delete. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, there we go, delete. Delete that as well. And now select inverse, crop. So you see half of the thing's already done. Now if I need to fine tune it a little bit, then we can do that. But as you can see, I didn't really have to do that at all. So I'm gonna go ahead and file save as, and in this case, we wanna do top underscore F20. Cool. Again, I'm just gonna now repeat the same process for the front view. So this is going to be front F20. So B-Rat Dominator says, I was always a fan of the MiG-21 in Top Gun, which was actually a F5E Tiger 11, which I believe was developed into the F20. Oh, very nice. Very, very cool. In that case, I'm going to make a big assumption here. You've watched Top Gun Maverick. How did you find it? Let me know. B-Rat Dominator. Okay, so that's that with the blueprints. I'm actually now going to go ahead and open Fusion. And the reason why I haven't opened Fusion so far is because I think every time I try streaming, it gets a bit laggy. And if I open too many things at once, that's not very nice. Oh, it's already not responding, which is not nice. I think it's safe to close Photoshop now. So I can see that there are 7 people watching. I've been communicating with one. If the others would also like to introduce themselves, that would be nice. Cool. I'm just gonna quickly move this there, and just because there's a little confidential data there. Cool. So there we go. I've now opened a project which is called YouTube Lives, and I'm going to create a new folder called the F20 Tiger Shark. And you can see that the heels is already in there as well because I was doing some practice when it was meant to be a commission. Okay, I'm already going to go ahead and save the file inside F20 Tiger Shark. I'm going to name the file itself Tiger Shark as well. All right. So there's nothing in there, but it's always safe to just, start saving right away. Okay, so one thing that we haven't done yet is found out the dimensions. So I'm gonna have to look up some dimensions. And this is always actually one of the trickiest parts because even though it is a repetitive process, like whatever model you make, you want to get the dimensions right. But it's always one of the most nervous moments to do it properly. But try your best, stay calm, and we'll do it. All right, so specifications, there we go. Okay, so we have here, so before I continue, so B-Rat Dominator says, I love Top Gun so much and was hesitant to watch Maverick, however, absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you on that. But man, I watched it once with a friend, and I was when Maverick did the thing he did, I stood up in the hall, and then I watched it again with my dad when I went to India, because a lot of my love for aircraft actually comes from my dad. So that's nice. And Sean Davies says, hello, enjoying your video. Used to use 3DS 4 in the day. Wow, thank you so much, Sean, for joining. When you say 3DS, do you mean 3DS Max? Okay, so here are some specs. We've got the length for 14.43. We've got wingspan, which is 8.53 with wingtip missiles, and 8.13 clean. Okay, so that's good to know. And the height is 4.2228. We also have the airfoil, which is nice. We might make use of that. But the reason why these are important 8.13 or 8.53. Actually, no, we have both variations. So if I bring in the blueprints from the top, so if we do canvas, browse, not commissions, we went to desktop, and we wanted to do F20 and F20 top, and we'll do it on the top view. Okay, so that's aligned in the right direction. And now what we can do is we can actually try with this top view to match not only the wingspan, but also the length itself. So we want to try matching, we can choose one of these. So we'll choose the length, which is 14.43. And, or actually, let's do the wingspan because that's probably easier, 8.13. And I'm assuming 8.13 is from clean wing to clean wing. And what I'm hoping is that when we scale that up correctly with the wingspan, that the length automatically also becomes the length that is mentioned in Wikipedia. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create a new sketch on the top view. And we'll go from there to there. And again, just for the sake of time, I'm okay if the blueprints don't match 100%, but we're going to try our best to make it as clean as possible. So, Sean, what did you do in the 3DS? I'd love to know what kind of work you did. So, finish the sketch and calibrate. And I want to zoom in. Again, this is not really super necessary, like me drawing that line, but it just ensures that I have a straight line. Okay, so we have here 8.13, which is what we want to do. And not in millimeters. So before I actually make that again, I want this to be in meters because our reference dimensions are in meters. All right, so we'll do calibrate. And I want to do 8.13 meters. Bang. Now we're assuming this would have blown up by at least 100 or 1,000 times. Okay, nice. Cool, so we have that there and we no longer require the sketch, so I'm going to go ahead and delete it. Right. Again, apologies if you can hear the trains. They like to screech a lot when they're braking. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And I think one thing we can do is right away we can draw a line from the top. And let's go from there all the way back. All right. And what I want to do is I want to measure this. So inspect, and then we can choose this line. And it's 15.238. So it's close enough. It is close enough. Now I wonder if that length also includes or doesn't include the engine. So we don't know that yet, and that's fine. I'm going to leave it as it is right now. We're going to add the other two blueprints, and then we're going to calibrate more. All right, so I'm going to leave that sketch there for now because we might need it in a bit. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and attach another canvas, and let's do the side one. And I want to attach it to the right side. So I'm going to now blow it up to approximately the right size. Okay, so somewhere there. And what I might try and do is compare the height, which is 4.2228. So I'm just going to copy that. And then let's see if we can get this one right. So we'll create a sketch from the right plane. And this will go from there to there, making sure that our degrees are still 90. Okay, finish the sketch. Canvas, side, calibrate. And even if it's just for approximations, do 4.2228. Well, we were quite close actually. But right away you can see that the tip there isn't aligning with our blueprint there. And you can see that even the back is not as long as the top view. So I think one thing that would help is if we turn the origin on, and I'll take the side edit canvas. And maybe this, in this case, because we have our wheels and we have a straight line, I might do that. So our bottom of the origin is aligned with the straight line there. Okay. Wow, Sean says that he is a graphic designer and he makes adverts in After Effects. So Adobe After Effects, amazing, amazing software. So you used to model spaceships like the Enterprise 1701. Wow, Sean, that is incredible. If you have some pictures you'd like to share, please, maybe you can post a link in the chat. That'd be nice to see. I actually used to make aircraft in 3ds Max as well when I was a lot younger. Um, oh, hey, Neil. Nice to see you, my friend. Um, been a very long time. Thank you for joining, even if it's for a little bit. So Neil and I went to university together, and we both did aeronautical engineering. So it's really nice to hear from him. Okay, so we can see that the line that we created earlier, which was for the side view, no, which was for the front view, is actually not in the center. So what I might do is I might delete that sketch right away, and we'll try and calibrate this. Sorry, we'll try and edit the canvas to try and bring this as close as possible to the center line. All right. So now what we can see is clearly that if the nose are aligned, we can see that the back isn't. So it's possible that one of these measurements is incorrect. So what we did is, Neil says, see you in London when you're back. Absolutely, my friend, and hope your model shoot went really well. So Neil is Curious Aviator in the comments. He's doing a bit of modeling as well, which is nice to see. When we were in university, we both used to do a little bit. So it's nice to see he's keeping that up, which is very, very cool. And he recently got featured in an advert, which is amazing. Absolutely amazing to see. Okay, so coming back to the blueprints, to try and calibrate this a little bit more, I'm going to try and measure what happens between that point there till that point there. So we can see, if I measure this, that is 14.455. So if we have a look at the length, that is actually correct. The length is 14.455. So that means from the tip of the nose to the back of the aircraft, including the engine, 14.455 makes sense, given that our height, is 4.183, which is very close to that. So that means that actually our side view is correct, but our top view is not. And that's okay. It's possible that we made a mistake using the wingspan. But now that we know for sure that the side view, which means the length of the aircraft, is indeed what it says in Wikipedia, we can use that same value to measure, to recalibrate the one on the top. So we'll do that as well. Before we go on to that, I want to now insert canvas for the front view. So we'll blow this one up a little bit and get it approximately to the same scale. Okay. And we also know now that the height of the aircraft, which is from the top of the tail to this horizontal line here where the wheels are resting, is correct as well. So we're going to use that same one to measure. And then what we can do is we can actually extract the wingspan from the front view once we get the height right. Okay, so let's go ahead and use the height again, which is 4.2228. And I'm going to create a sketch on the front plane. We'll take that line. Again, we went all the way from the top, making sure it's 90 degrees, and we'll come back down. Okay, I seem to have lost my cursor. Okay, just to be careful, we'll make it vertical as well. Okay, and we'll finish the sketch. Front, calibrate, and we'll go from there to there. And then we'll apply the constraints. Cool. We'll take the front, we'll edit the canvas, and we'll drag it above. And then again, we want to try and make it so that the horizontal lines match with the horizontal line of the origin, and that the aircraft blueprint itself is also as closely as symmetrical as possible to the origin. So let's go ahead and press OK. All right. Cool. So I'm going to hide the sketches temporarily and the origin, and I'm going to press save. And one of the checks that I already can do is the one here. So if the noses are aligned for the front and the side, we can see that the tops also align pretty well. I can potentially see a problem with the canopy where there might be a small mismatch, but that's okay. We can approximate there. So the only thing now left for the blueprints is actually the top view. So let's go ahead and take the length again, which is 14.43. And I'll just try and do a shortcut. I won't make the line again, but I'll go in as close as possible. And I'll go as back as possible. And I'm going to press 14.43, reduce in size. And we can see potentially we might have fixed our issue. So if I bring that as close as possible, as symmetrical as possible, there we go. I think that's beautiful. Look at that. Always makes me happy. So initially you'll be quite nervous trying to match the blueprints, but be patient, be calm. It's going to work. All right. So look at that. Now if we look at it from the top and right one, we can see that the backs align beautifully. The fronts align beautifully. It's beautiful. And now if we look at the front and the side at the same time, they also match. Again, there might be a slight mismatch with the canopy, but that's okay. And one more check we can do is the front and the top as well. So if I click there we go. So now the wing spines align as well. Fantastic. So now actually comes the interesting bit, because you've seen me do this in so many different tutorials. Actually, before we do that, let me just go back in time and disperse the blueprints. So I'm going to construct an offset plane to about there. I'll do another one to about there. And I'll do another one down there. And if you remember, the reason why I do this is because if the blueprints are too close to one another, it may seem like they are more distracting than they are useful. So edit the feature, I'll throw that one down. And we'll take this one and we'll throw it there. And I'll take this one and we'll throw it there. Fantastic. All right, how are we doing? Cool. So for those of you who are on, I see 8 of you here. I've heard from a few of you. I'd love to hear from the rest as well, if possible. Okay. I'm going to hide our constructions now. I'm going to bring back the origin. We may not need it yet. We'll bring back the sketches for sure. But we don't need these sketches anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and delete them. Fantastic. Okay, so now that we have our blueprints ready, usually I would say now comes the easy part, because I've modeled airliners so often now that I know what exactly needs to be done. But oh, it seems like that one actually could go a bit further. Yeah. But in this case, I have to think a little bit more, because the fuselage for this isn't as straightforward as the other ones. So what I'm seeing already is and let me know if you guys agree, especially BRAD Dominator, since you wanted to see this. So we have this section here, which perhaps could be modeled as a single piece, maybe going all the way there. And somehow we also start merging this one in. So the main view, so if you follow my mouse, that's probably going to be one single entity, which will then be merged with that entity there. And then the wings and the rest of the stuff is, I'm going to assume it's pretty similar to the stuff we've done already. And in this case, the wings are quite thin because it is a supersonic aircraft. And supersonic aircraft, the ideal is that you have the wings as thin as possible. Obviously, while still being structural integrity is still there. Yeah, so the fuselage is going to actually be the most tricky bit over here. And one more thing that I'd like to do is have a look at some pictures of this, just to get a bit more clarity as to what we can do. Okay, so it's quite a long aircraft. We can see that that is actually going down. So the intakes look like they're going down. Am I right? Okay, so I think it's safest to actually have a look at some pictures. Okay, I think that's an interesting view we can keep. So again, all of these pictures are available on Google, and I'm just using them as reference. That one seems quite blurry actually, so we can't use that. Let's have a look at a standard one then. It's quite a high view, but again, I guess you can see that it would make sense if this main fuselage, where the canopy, the cockpit is the nose section, as well as sort of the middle bit of the fuselage is one body, and then somewhere at the back it sort of extrudes here. And I'm already somewhat strategizing in my head how we could do that. So the main bit of the fuselage will be made with T-splines naturally, but I'm assuming that this one here, which is the air intakes, can actually be modeled either in solid forms or in T-spline forms. In fact, even in surface forms, but I think I'm going to stay away from that as much as possible. Just because if we're not careful in the surface form, things can get quite tricky because it's possible that it may not turn into a solid body after it all. So, yep. And if you have any suggestions on how we could take this forward, let me know. Let's have a look at the back view. So again, this maybe is giving us even though this is it seems like a scaled model, 172. Same situation. It makes even more sense to do that. And I think B-Rat Dominator was talking about that he'd be interested to see me do the canopy. And I can see why he's saying that, because this is not a particularly smooth, gradual curve. It is, it sort of comes here and then it bumps up and then it goes up. Actually, I just thought of an idea. If we come to the side view, you can see here that actually the blueprints do a pretty decent job in letting us know where exactly the curve starts. So might model it after that as well. Okay, so what I'm assuming is going to happen is I'm going to start, I'm going to try, and I might fail a couple of times. And I want you guys to know that's completely fine and is part of the process. I've never built an aircraft like this one before. And why I wanted to do this live is because hopefully you guys can see me troubleshoot and strategize live in front of everybody, which I always enjoy other people doing. So it's nice to be doing it this time myself. Okay, right away I can see that from the front it's a bit confusing if we didn't know what was happening with the air intake. So it's not that this section here is in the front, only this section here is in the front, and then that sort of goes backwards and upwards. So it goes, this is the front section here, and then it goes backwards and upwards. Okay, so let's start modeling. Let's create a form. And again, I think in this case, cylindrical still makes sense. So I'm going to hover over the origin there, and I'm going to pull up as much as possible. making sure it's still in the plane of symmetry so that you can see those blue dotted lines are what ensure that I'm still in the plane of symmetry. I'm going to try and approximate a center. So I'm going to do that. And then maybe I will end it there. Okay, and we do want a mirror, so symmetry is mirror. And we want the width symmetry. You can see that the green has been highlighted. We'll keep the number of faces as it is right now, and then if we really need to add some more, maybe we can see what needs to be done. But I'm happy with the H and 4 now. I'm going to go ahead and press OK. And I'm going to take this entire thing and move it backwards. And maybe I will place it somewhere here to start with. And then I'm going to take these faces away. And now we can start maneuvering this a little better. So press M. Nope, that doesn't work. It wants to move away too fast. So let's cancel that. I'm going to now edit form. And I'm going to double click on this edge. I'm going to bring it back slightly, just so we can meet that line there. And now I want to select all of them and I want to scale it up a little bit. So maybe in this case, we want to stick with the outer boundaries of the blacks instead of the inner boundaries. It's the black edges. So let's do that. And already we can see that this one needs to be scaled down just a little bit. But before we do that, I want to go to the top view and see what... Right, so remember, we don't want this to go all the way there. We have to be careful not to be illusioned by this blueprint. But what the blueprint's also kind enough to do for us is give us that line. So we're going to use that line as our reference. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to scale it in 2 dimensions from this angle here. Great. And again, you can see because it's tapering down, it would make sense if this edge was here, but this one had to scale down just a little bit. And one more issue I can see right away is that this line in the blueprint, the dark black line, is over here. And over here, it's a little bit. So this edge, this ring that I've just highlighted, is matching with the black line in the blueprints, but over here it's not, which means that either this one is a little bit front or the other one is a little bit back. Well, I'm just gonna ignore that for now. And as we said, in the interest of time, I do want to keep this to 2 hours, but I don't think it's going to be 2 hours. It might be potentially more, but let's do our best. Not a problem. So yeah, I need to have really steady hands for this. There we go. 1054. Perfect. So that views that. And over here as well, we need to scale it down just a little bit. That's too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do 9 and see what happens. It's scaled it ever so slightly, which is nice. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tackle the easier bit to sort of warm myself up, and I'm going to start going backwards. So I might do something like that, and then again scaling this down so slightly. And a part of me feels like this is really unintuitive because I'm so used to doing proper cylindrical aircraft. So your airliners will usually have a pretty circular, very close to a circular cross section, because you want your cabin to be pressurized equally. Otherwise, the plane will implode. So that's not nice. But obviously, with military aircraft, you have a completely different criteria that you need to keep in mind. So you'll spot that the fighter jets usually look a little bit more aggressive, and that's not just an aesthetic thing. It's actually there because of the its mission brief will dictate its form and functions. So it's always nice to have details on those and appreciate those those little things that we may not think about on a daily basis. Okay, so here we can see that that might need to be scaling down. Maybe do something like that. So how are we doing in the comments? You're at Dominator, let me know. This one, you wanted to see the F20 Tiger Shark, and we're doing it. Let me know how you're feeling. And just in case you're following along, I'd love to know where you are as well. Okay, so again, just gradually taping it down. Now here in the back section, it starts to get a little bit interesting. And okay, I see why. And the reason is because we have this little section here, which I'm assuming is there for structural reasons. Yeah, that's what I have to wake up to every day, those seagulls. Very noisy. But yeah, you can see here in the side view as well. So it's quite gradual up until the point where you start seeing the horizontal stabilizers flat section kick in. So what I might do is, just for the sake of time, I'm going to try and keep that flat and not make too much of, not add too much complexity there. But I will start tapering this down a little bit more. And maybe this one can actually be tapered down a little bit as well. Just okay. Let's go up again. And I think perhaps here we could taper it down a little bit more, just so not 8.42. One thing I wish I had a little bit more control over is visually seeing how much my numerical values are making a difference before I commit to those numerical values. Because you can see if I try doing this, if my mouse is not sensitive enough, it wants to jump between values. Okay, there we go. So let's remove the canvases for now and let's have a look at how this looks like. Not gonna lie, it looks a bit strange. It feels too thin to me, but we also know that this is not the actual full shape of the fuselage. So nice. Okay, so now let's start tackling the front bit, which might be tricky, but let's have a look. Let's do Alt and expand. I'm going to try and bring it to the canopy section, which is quite close. And over here, we can see that this is obviously going to expand a little bit more. All right. Now there's two things we could potentially do here. And the easy thing to do, which is, well, easier, but also faster to do, is to go along still using the same body and going in that direction. And then we can split the canopy off like we do for the cockpit sections in our normal airliners. The harder bit to do, or the harder way to do it, is to actually make separate bodies from the start. So in a way, where we've reached now is here. And we can see that in the real aircraft, there is a bit of a dent here. And that dent is starting from there and it sort of just goes forward. Right, so let's have a look at some more pictures. Or dent is not really the right word. It's more of a groove. So Genius CODM says, I missed this finally. Happy to hear that. Happy to have you. Um, so today we're building the F20 Tiger Shark, which was decided um, by the spinner that we did in the beginning of this video. Yeah, so as I was saying, the easy thing would be is what we're doing right now, which is to take the T-spline body all the way up here and then continue modeling as if nothing was changing. But the more tricky thing to do would be to actually model this section here as a separate body. So if you're following my mouse, we go from here to underneath the cockpit. So we imagine that is one body, and then we merge. So we create another body on the top, and then we merge that. And the latter method, which I'm talking about, which is the more complex one, is actually more realistic, and is something I have done in a previous model that I made for a commission. And that commission was actually one of the most detailed, well, not detailed, it was the most accurate aircraft I've ever made. And it was a 1-to-1 scale of an aircraft from the 1920s or 1930s. It was made for a gentleman in the US Air Force. And I had a lot of fun doing it. It required a lot of concentration and patience. But what I might do for now is I might continue the normal way, and then perhaps we can do a specific live just to tackle this issue, which I think will be quite fun. So for now, in the interest of time, I'm just going to go ahead and do it like this. But for BRAD Dominator, if you are making this by yourself, I highly recommend doing it using separate bodies and then merging them together, because I think that's easily a winner in terms of the aesthetics. So what's happening here? So let me just make this 5% bigger. Perfect. So I think that's still fine. We can see there's a bit of irregularity in the plane of symmetry, where we have our T-spline's edge matching the edge of the aircraft, but on the other side we don't. And that's fine. I'm going to take our side, which is the bottom side, to be as truth, and because we're going to split and mirror the aircraft anyways. Okay, so let's go ahead and create some more. So for anyone who's following along and wants to do this by themselves, hopefully you're following the more complex way, which is the nicer way of doing this. Actually, I think it'd be better if we stopped here. Yeah, that's better. Just have more curvature. And hopefully that I have actually given you somewhat of a way to go about doing the more complex method. Okay, so that was nice. So Genius says, I do have questions about the presentation and weight analysis. Okay. What's the complex way? Okay, so I'll just repeat myself, no problem at all. Give me 1 second. Oops, that's not correct. Yeah, let's just go back there, just easier. So yeah, we've received a question from Genius saying that what's a complex way? And I'll just describe it just so everyone can have another look. So what I'm doing right now is similar to what I do in the airliners, which is to create the fuselage as one single entity, and then we cut away the cockpit from it. So the cockpit section for airliners is pretty simple because it's part of the curvature of the fuselage, right? And then we make the little drawings of the cockpit, and then we sort of split the form and we split the bodies according to that. So that's a similar method that I'm following here. And the reason why I'm doing that is in the interest of time, just to make it a little bit simpler to finish the aircraft as soon as we can. But the better way, in my opinion, would be to make it as separate bodies. So let me explain a little further. We come back to this picture here. What you can see is if I start my body from the back and just imagine this thinner section here, don't worry about the air intakes. So we just follow that, and then currently we're doing one body all the way going up to the canopy and then going down. So we're including the canopy in the body that we're creating all at once, and then we're going to cut the canopy away, right? So similar to what we're doing with the airliners. But the better way to do it, which is the more complex way, is to make it in two separate bodies. So similar to how we're making the air intake a separate body from the main thinner part of the fuselage, we also want to make it a separate body from the canopy. So ideally what would happen is you'd have the canopy as one body, which is merging into this main thinner body of the fuselage. And then you have your air intakes on the side, which are then merging into the main fuselage as well. So in a way, everything's sort of coming together into the main fuselage. So that is, in my opinion, the better complex way of doing it. So if you're trying this at home yourself, do try it out. I highly recommend putting in some time and doing it. I'll probably do it myself when I have some more spare time. And then maybe I'll make a tutorial video for it if you want. Vasu says, hi, sir. Hello, Vasu. Very nice to have you here. Okay, so let's go back to Fusion and continue. So I'm just going to go ahead and edit the form again. And if you're new here, welcome. Pleasure to have you. What I'm doing is I'm creating the F-20 Tiger Shark, and the tools that I'm using right now are very clearly described in my tutorial series, which is available on my channel. Yes, exactly, genius. It's a bit funny calling you genius at the same time. I'll bring this down. Let's try that, shall we? Okay, that's better. Okay, so let's keep going forward. Some of you might be interested to know that one other thing I've been trying is how we're making the T-spline, the fuselage with T-splines. But one of the aircraft I made for one of the commissions was actually done using lofting. So I had different cross sections across the fuselage, and that was actually quite hard, but it was more accurate. We had different cross sections along the fuselage, and then we loft those sections together. So that is a slightly more accurate way of doing this. And you can see why that would be more accurate is currently we are almost approximating all the curvatures in the cross sections here. Whereas in a case like that, you'd have maybe 6 or 7 cross sections across, and you'd loft them together. So Genius says, will this video be uploaded too? I'd like to work on it. Yeah, absolutely. So all my lives are automatically uploaded to my YouTube channel. So if you go to my channel and you click on the live tab, you'll see those videos there, and you'll see this one pop up right after, literally right after the video ends. So we can do something like that. Genius says it's a stage name. When you say stage name, is there something you perform? Ain't No Saint says that I would be more interested in. I'm into designing RC airplanes. Sorry, what would you be more interested in? Genius says lofting seems more common. 100% it is. And the reason is because you need accurate, you need the real cross sections from the aircraft. So currently, if you look at most of the blueprints that you will see online are usually 2 or 3 views, which is the way we're doing it. So my method so far has been how do we make the best model that we can from the limited resources we have. But if you give me more resources, the best way to do it might actually be slightly different. So the gentleman from the US Air Force who I made that other aircraft for gave me a lot more than just 3 views. He gave me a lot of different views, a lot of different cross sections. So what I did was I had to actually do um, some really tricky stuff to make sure that I had the right radii, for each cross section, and then I had to align them in a particular way that they actually, according to the blueprints, lined up correctly. So there was a lot of it was way more challenging than what I'm showing you here, but definitely worth it. Like when I finished that model was incredible. So ain't no saying says lofting is something you'd be more interested in, and 100%. So some of my customers, some of my clients, and some of people who watch my YouTube tutorials regularly, a lot of them are into RC aircraft. So some of my clients have been specifically asked to make RC planes. So I give them the model as it is, and then I also design so I designed the aircraft in the same manner as I'm showing you now, and then I also create the molds for 3D printing, so you can then eventually build it with fiberglass or carbon fiber, which is incredible. So when so ain't no saying when you're talking about creating RC planes, you mean doing it in the form of how a real aircraft is built, which is using you have more the airframe that you have is more accurate. So some of my clients have taken that aircraft that I have made for them, and then they've gone ahead and created the cross sections based off the model here, which is totally possible to do. A lot of people do it. I personally have not done that, but if you needed some help and guidance on how to do that, please do reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to help. Okay, let's continue. I don't know if I have permission to show you the model, otherwise I would have totally shown you what I'd done, because I think that's the model I'm most proud of for all the years that I've been doing this for. Okay, so we can see here that this is now starting to taper in. Um, yeah, I can imagine this looking a bit funky from different angles because we've modeled it as one single entity. But let's continue for now, and then let's see what more we can do. Biggest problem I have is lofting the canopy to create a mold to vacuum form one for the model. Oh wow, you're going to do vacuum forming. Um, why ain't no saying why is that a problem? Why is there a problem if you wanted to vacuum form it? I've done a bit of vacuum forming like 6 years ago when I was in high school. Um, Now, this is interesting because ideally at that point we'd cut off the main fuselage and then we'd loft the nose. But I can imagine there could be severe problems because of how thin and squashed the cross section is. So we have to be a little bit careful with that. Whereas if we come a little bit closer, we can see that this is getting more and more closer to a normal cylindrical circular cross section, which is a lot easier to loft according to Fusion. So let's have a look and see what we can do. So I'm going to go ahead and press OK. And if you go back, so this is This is fitting the model quite well, except that area there. I think that shouldn't be as um, um, that shouldn't be as smooth as it is. There should be a little bit more of a crease there. So actually one thing I want to try is if I just double click here, and if I go to modify and I say crease, that would form a little bit of a crease there. And now if I edit form, I'm going to pull this back a little bit. That might help me create a little bit of a separation there. Okay, so yeah. So it does look a little strange. Maybe I'm not used to it, but also we are quite in the early stages. So if we see from the front section, the views actually matching quite well. I'm a bit surprised that it's able to do that that well. But yeah, maybe I'm just not used to creating aircraft like this. So it looks a little bit strange for me right now, but I think we're going to be okay. I'm going to go ahead and press save. And I'm going to try and loft that section there. So let's see what more we can do in the next 45 minutes, because I said in the start of the video I want to keep this to 2 hours. So I'm going to patch that in. I'm going to stitch those two together. And also for the back section, I'm going to repeat the same. And all I'm doing here is going from one surface to creating a solid body. So now if I open the bodies folder, instead of seeing 3 different surfaces, you'll see just one single body. Okay. All right, let's see how we're doing. Right. So following on from the airliners again, I am going to create a new sketch here. I'm going to project that ellipse, L on my keyboard, center, there, T on my keyboard to trim. And there we have it. That's all we need. Press save, finish sketch. Okay, and now we want to create a bit here. Now, one thing I've actually seen people do, which would be quite accurate, is when we have something like a MiG-21 where the tip, the nose of the aircraft is quite close to a tip, we just loft, instead of doing this 3 planar loft, we just do one loft to a point. And that actually works quite well. But again, we do have a bit of a rounded situation here, so I'm just going to do it the normal way that I do it. Why make the nose a new body? Well, because when we're extruding from the T-splines, I usually tend to extrude planar, so it's vertical sections. Yes. So when I extrude, you can see that every time I've extruded a T-spline and made a new surface from it, it has been in vertical sections like this. And because this nose surface that we're doing is going to be more rounded from the thing, I find it easier to do it like this. Of course, there are many ways of doing it. One way to actually, I might possibly go with that as well, in case I run into problems here, or I might actually try it out. I've not done it, but it's another one that I've thought about doing, is you fill the hole in T-splines and then you sort of just push it out. So let me make the nose first here, and then we'll see what I'm talking about in the previous one as well. So I'm going to go ahead and create a control point spline. I'm just going to project those 2 spline, and let's see if we can loft this. Of course, you want to okay, perfect. The reason why I didn't make a straight line myself is because just in case there was a slight misalignment between that face between the front face and the sketch, then it would definitely fail. So I've just projected that there, and it's already created that into a single surface. So finish the sketch. Right. Loft 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's actually been completely okay with that. But I do fear that if I had gone a little bit before, it would have not liked it at all. Yeah. Okay. So I'm cool with that. Let's go ahead and press save. Now, to try and do the nose in a slightly different way, what I can do is, let me just patch this up, turn it into a solid, and then we'll go back in time and try and see how we could have done it using T-splines. I don't think I've ever shown that in the tutorials before. So go ahead and press OK. I'm going to stitch here and here. Right, so I'm going to label that nose underscore loft. All right, I'm going to hide it now, and because Genius and Ain't No Saint mentioned this, I want to kind of show how I would have done it if this was still in T-splines. So I'm going to go back in T-splines, and I don't know if this is going to work, but we're just going to try it out. I'm going to do modify, fill hole, and you can see that it's done something funky there. So we don't want it to be a reduced star. Let's do fill star. And you can see that it's created a pretty nice rounded surface there. If we do collapse, it's going to come up with a small point there, which we can try and extrude it a little bit further, because I believe this needs to go a bit further. Perfect. So let me take that and move it a bit front and see what happens. Yeah, so that's the problem, right? That's the problem. So if I try doing that, it's trying to take a single one and move it. So if I press OK, that's definitely not good. But if let's say I want to do edit form, and I want to pick, let's actually pick all of these and try and move them front. So I'm going to pick all of these, and I'm going to try moving them front, and maybe reducing them in size. So I think that's cool, because that actually looks way better than what we've done with the loft. But this also does not always work. So there we go. I think that looks a lot better. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the form. And in this case, our surfaces and stitches will fail because there's no longer a single, there's no longer an empty space for us to patch and therefore stitch. So what you've seen is it's given us a few errors here, which makes perfect sense. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and click on that, and I'm going to shift and click all of them, and then I'm going to click delete. So what do you guys think? Do you think that was a better method than the loft one? I think it was. Okay. I still feel a bit uneasy about that, knowing that I could have done it better. It's bugging me a little bit, but again, trying to stay true to time, I'm not going to force it. If we have a little bit more time in the end, I might do it. Okay. Actually wondering if we could pull this back a little bit more. Probably not a good idea, because it seems like we've got that slightly different shade of silver, which means it's part of the engine rather than a part of the fuselage. So I'm going to keep that as it is where it is. Okay, so we're happy here. We've made sort of the main section of the fuselage. And again, it is slightly bugging me that I could have done this better, but we're going to leave it at that for now. Now comes the next interesting bit, which is this section of the fuselage. How do we do that? Now, should this have been curved in the first place? or not. So in order to do this, perhaps, what might be cool is going back to T-splines and creating another body within T-splines, but still having access to the previous one. So Genius says it might not work all the time, but it worked better than I expected. Yeah, same for me. I think it worked a lot better than I expected in this particular scenario. It's always nice to just try out different variations for sure. Okay. I am now trying to think about the air intakes. So the way I was thinking about this initially is that let's say we have some section that sort of completes that that round section there at the back, which would be one single sort of entity, but then we'd have a few lofts. So maybe in this tutorial, because of the way we've modeled the thinner fuselage, maybe it won't be as perfect. But I think if I were to go back in time and do this, I'd do another take on this, I'd probably re-strategize on how to do the middle section. But in all honesty, I think even this might look better than I had initially hoped for. But let's continue and see how this goes. Again, the reason why we're doing this live together is we could figure out some new techniques. Right. So how do we start? I'm thinking we start with a section here, for example, and then we turn that into a T-spline sketch, and then we extrude it in a similar fashion to what we've been doing with the main fuselage. Well, if we look at the top, okay, let's try that. Let's try it. Okay, so what I want to try and do is I'm going to create a sketch. And I'm going to draw a D. And again, because this is the first time we're doing this, I'm okay if it's approximate, just so it can act as a proof of concept. So in order to make this a little bit more simpler to do and ease of use, I'm just going to assume this is a D. So let's make that a D. I guess the best way to do that is let's just turn it into a rectangle first. We turn it into a rectangle. And then I can just fillet these two edges. And then I can kind of act like my D. There we go. And don't worry about the hole for now. We're gonna act like it's not there for now. Again, just trying to do this as a proof of concept. And if we know it works, then we can definitely go back in time, add more detail, or add the details, or we can cut away the hole afterwards. So let's finish that sketch there. And remember, we made that sketch while we were inside T-spline space. So what I want to do now is extrude. Actually, I'm just going to take that, edit form. Nope, doesn't like that. So let's extrude using that as the profile. And we want to keep creases in this case. So let's try and pull this back. And we can see, we press OK. That's perfect, actually. That's perfect. It's exactly what I wanted. So I'm going to now try and move body 2 to the back. So this is going to start, and you can see it's quite clever. It's starting to show shadows, meaning that's not exactly at the same position as the fuselage. Okay, and we can see that this is slightly tilted. So if we really wanted, we could rotate this a bit. But again, for ease of use, where's it gone? For ease of use, I'm gonna assume that it's just straight for now. Okay, again, we are just trying to brainstorm here. And maybe I'll start it from here. I'm gonna go ahead and press OK. So for those of you who are trying this out yourself as well, please let me know how you might be doing this. Okay, so edit form. We can see this is sort of going upwards, definitely from the top section, but I want to find out more about what's happening at the bottom section. So the bottom section seems like it's relatively flat, and then it gets joined with this sort of sheet, which is connected to the wing. So let's do that. Okay. So let's pull and make it a bit bigger. And I guess this is where the tricky bit is, because I'm not exactly sure at what point should we start merging these together. Because from this perspective, it looks like it happens at a very gradual way, but it only really happens just where the vertical stabilizer starts. So that's where it sort of really gets merged into the fuselage. But apart from that, we can see there's a bit of spacing here. So I wonder how we could tackle that. Okay, let's proceed, and then we'll figure it out as we go along. Okay, so I'm just going to move that inwards. You can see that potentially the gap, the width of the intake stays the same, but it's just moving inwards. So I'm going to assuming that that's the case, I'm going to model this further. Okay. By the way, it very well might be that that's not the case, but we will learn. Okay, so actually let's bring it back because there is a bit of curvature here, so we don't want to have these too further apart. Okay. Again, so we can move it in, and then a bit bigger. So you can see it's starting to get real close, and eventually, as we go along, and if we don't reduce the size of it, it will eventually just blend into our main fuselage. The intersections might look a bit interesting, but let's see what we can do about that bit. So we keep going, and at that point, it stops becoming larger, I guess, at that section there. And then we pull this in. And then we keep going, maybe till here. And we can see that at that point, it's really starting to, sort of go inside. But according to these pictures, we can see that starts happening at the front of the vertical stabilizer. So maybe we can increase the width here, maybe. But let's have a look. Let's keep going for now. Let's be patient and see what we can do. So at this point, perhaps it might be a better idea if we reduce the size, because this is now, you can see over here, according to the blueprints, this should have become, ideally, you should have just blended straight in. right? So I'm gonna assume, let's just make it a bit bigger there. And let's push this all the way in. Okay, I'm gonna press OK for now, and let's see what we've just done. That is a lot better than I thought it would turn out to be. So that's really nice. It's not perfect, it's far from perfect, but we can see that as a sort of proof of concept, that's working out really well. Now, if we found a slightly better way to merge these two bodies, so perhaps, see, the tricky thing is, I don't know what's happening in that pocket there. And that's why it's becoming a little bit difficult to really model this thing, because I'm making a bunch of assumptions here. You can see clearly there's a cavity there, but then at some point it just sort of blends in. And this is where having those cross sections would be such an amazing thing, because you just know where to do it. It would still be tricky to do, but it'd be a little bit easier to see, have a bit more clarity. Okay, so you see there, just about there, according to this model, that it blends in absolutely perfectly. So if we go to the top view again, and I'm wondering if I just pushed, for example, if I made it bigger from this angle and I push this in, just out of curiosity, I want to know what it does. So I know this is a slightly lazier way of sort of blending two pieces in. I think ideally what I would have liked to do is open up, for example, I would have opened up that surface there. So if you imagine this gets deleted, and this gets deleted, and this gets deleted, and I have this section here where, for example, this gets deleted and this gets deleted. And now we sort of have these two open bodies, which can now really be welded together. So I'm just going to try it out. I can't guarantee that it's going to work. We're going to try it out. So let's do modify, perhaps. I don't know if I want to merge the edge or I want to bridge it. I think bridge might be dangerous, because when you bridge something together, it can kind of form its own shape. In this particular case, maybe merging the edge, we could try. So let's do group edge 1 and group edge 2. Let's press OK and see what happens. No, that it didn't like at all. So maybe we need to select a few more edges at a time. So we do 1, 2, 3, and I know why. So the reason, as you can see, we have one face and two face, but here we have 1, 2, and 3 face that is open. Okay, is our fourth one open as well? So actually, let's do this maybe perhaps one face at a time. So I'm going to undo all of this. Okay. And what I'll do is I'll first just open up 1, and I'll open 1 and 1 here as well. Oops. So if I just wanted to delete that. So you can see, because of the symmetry, it's also opening up that section there, which is fair enough because we did add that symmetry. Let's just try it out. So I'm going to open that up, and I want that guy to blend into that edge, and I want this one to blend in there. So if our edges aren't working, let me try and weld the vertices together. So we know that we want this one there, and we want I think there's a problem with symmetry, which is causing the problem. Okay, there we go. So look at that was cool. So the reason why it went back from box mode to smooth mode is because it's got the right amount of vertices to now become a full body again. So if I go ahead and press OK, and you can see that this is the warning. I just realized you can't see the warnings because my thing shows up here. Basically, the warning that it gave me is that Fusion knows that this section we made here is meant to be symmetrical. And so now when we're trying to do something that's not symmetrical and doesn't have the same symmetry, it is highlighted as a different color. But I'm just going to finish form and see what happens. Okay, T-spline intersects. No problem. I know why that's happening. Oops, let's go back in time. Yeah. T-splines are indeed intersecting because clearly we have this one here and the other one there. So maybe this won't be 2 hours, maybe it will be a little bit longer, but I want to try. I just want to try. So I'm going to go ahead and continue with this section. So let's delete that. And if we really need to add a few more edges in either of the locations, I think we can totally do that. That's not a problem at all. Okay, so perhaps that one can be merged. You see there's a bit of a wrinkle over here because it's tried to merge into that. But let's try blending that into there now. Now this is going to be extremely tricky, I feel like. So this might be worth making a separate video for. But I'm keen to find out what we can do. So that's blended in there. And let's try blending this one. Oops, no. Let's do it the other way around. Let's try blending that one into that one. So let's do blend, modify, weld. And I want to try welding that one to that one. Okay, not bad at all. Not bad at all. But if I keep doing this, I can see a bit of a problem where there will come a point where we just won't know where to stop because it might want to keep intersecting into itself, which is not a good thing. And you can see here as well, it's done a bit of a funky situation, which is not nice. So let's cancel that. Again, now that we see what kind of problems we're facing, you can already start to think that if you were to remodel the middle section here, you would you definitely do it a little differently, wouldn't you? Okay, so just as a thing, I'm just going to delete and delete till we come to a point where Now let's do modify and come on, weld. Sorry, my PC is lagging. So we go from there and we try and blend into there. Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense why I didn't like that, because there's an extra vertex which we didn't consider, which is perhaps, you know, I think it might be safer to subdivide this a little bit more and come up with the exact number of edges as we have in this exhaust. So let me just go back in time before we start welding stuff again, just to stay a bit safe, is to okay, so let's leave it there, press save. Okay, and this is us returning to a point where we know things were okay. So if I press finish form, it's completely fine because you can see these are two separate bodies and Fusion will not complain. So we saved it at that point. But now, what would be nice is if we now tried aligning some of these bodies together. So let's assume that this edge is happy to blend with that edge, and that edge is happy to blend with that edge, but this one is sort of lost in the middle of nowhere. And it's got no place. So we can either remove this edge or we add another one here. And I think what would be better is if we added one here. So let's insert an edge. Okay, so we've got a full ring. And if I just go to the top view, and we can try aligning it close to there. So you can see now that that can go on with that one can go on with that one, and hopefully that one can go on with that one. And perhaps maybe for the next few minutes, we can try, and at least we can try blend these guys together. So what I might do temporarily is I'm just going to save here as well. I might just get rid of, or actually not get rid of, I'm just going to copy these guys. So copy and paste. Because we don't want to lose the previous ones, but just for the sake of experimentation, and this is something I often do, I copy paste and I just delete. All right. The reason why I've just done that is, don't worry, we still have the copies there for body 1 and body 2. But the reason why I've done this is to isolate a section that I want to experiment with, and then we see how it goes on from there. Okay, so we've got the right number of edges now. So I'm hoping what we can reveal is that what we're thinking of doing is possible. Let's remove the canvas being distracting. Okay, and let's remove, I don't think we can remove that, but when we blend it in, okay, so that's nice, right? We could even try, let's actually try bridging. I'm just curious to see what happens if we try and bridge this. Yeah. So the symmetry thing just happened again, but you can see that's actually not too bad. Except, I mean, it was quite smart about it that it went in, but that's not exactly what we want. So I'm going to undo that, not a problem. And perhaps we delete these guys. Right? Perhaps we do that, and then let's try bridging these two together. So double click on that edge group and double click on that edge group. Oops. Bridge. double click there, double click there, press OK. Now that's crazy. I like that. That actually looks really nice. Of course, now we also, because this is still in T-spline mode, one thing we could do is just bump it up. So you can see it's created 3 sections here. So if we just undo that and maybe reduce the number of sections it does. So let me bring that here to make it a bit easier. So let's just do 1 extra face and see what happens. Yeah, nice one. And now if we wanted to, we could take that, edit form, and we could easily just push this a little up. To see what happens. Okay, and now if we were to bring this one down, so let's do that from the back view actually, it might be easier. So we brought that down, but also to somewhere. Still orthographic here. Actually, let's leave that where it is and only bring it down a little bit. Sorry guys, my Fusion keeps on bugging out. So let's do that, and then we'll remove this section here. And then let's try bridging it. Right? So if we come back, edit form, put, not just that, sorry, want the whole thing. Edit form, and we go down. Actually looks a bit crazy. So instead of using bridging, I might just straight up weld the vertices, because I like where these vertices are, but I don't like where this is. So if I just merge the edges, I want to see what happens. So that's edge 1 and that's edge 2. Press OK. Ooh, okay. I'm not sure what that was about. Yeah, that's terrible. So let's let's undo that. And let's just weld the vertices. Of course, we could have just welded the vertices in the first place, but oh, okay. So for some reason, some of these are frozen, and I don't think I did that. I think I did that by mistake, maybe. Weld. Yeah, there we go. Now it's selectable, which is nice. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Ah, this is starting to look really nice. So now if I finish form, tell me that doesn't look good. That is amazing. So imagine if we did the same thing now, but for the entire front section of the intake. I think that would look really nice. So essentially, we'd have a much better intake and a much smoother design towards the back. And then I guess we could, I think we're running out of time. That's why I'm going to explain this in the shortest way possible. But B-Rat Dominator, I'm really glad you agree, because, wow, this is new stuff for me. So I'm highly glad it worked out. I don't think we can finish the aircraft in this live, but that's completely fine. I think the most interesting bit, which most people would want to look at, is this, because the wing and the other stuff is, it's pretty much the same process as what we've been doing in the other videos, but this was the most trickiest one. So just to try and summarize how to model this properly then, is again remembering that it's not all the way smooth, but it does have, it does start creasing from somewhere around here. So instead of making it completely smooth like we have here, we try and keep somewhat of a dip, if you know what I mean. So currently we have it completely smooth, which is going into this sort of cylindrical cross-sectional area. But what we want is a bit of a dip. So it goes in like that. So you've got that sort of intersection, um, which is visible here. So if I hide that body and go back to the canvas, you can see that obviously there's a clear sort of, um, I don't know how to describe it. My brain has stopped working because I've been in flow mode and I keep forgetting that I'm live. But this was a lot of fun, right? Um, so if any of you want to try this out at home, maybe send me a few pictures. You can email it to me. You can send it to me on Instagram, and I would share it because this is some really tricky stuff. But I think we've gotten a pretty decent place. And perhaps what I'll do in my own time, if I do get the time, is I would change that cockpit section there, and then I'd also change this exhaust section here. But yeah, what do you guys think? Genius and B-Rat Dominator, Hit No Saint, how are we guys feeling? And everyone else who's in the live. So while we're at it, I think I might want to reduce this one a little bit. Yeah, you're right. The F14 and also, um, well, yeah, you're right, you're right. The F14, also the F15 has a similar situation where it's sort of, I guess, it's safe to say a lot of the military, at least of that age, have a similar intake situation, right? So if we look for the F15, a lot of people have actually requested me for these kind of military jets, right? The modern ones. Another Top Gun jet, yes. Um, and it's a similar situation where I would model it in the same way, where you would have the main conical section. It's almost conical. I mean, in this case, I'd pretty much loft it to a point. Um, is that main section there? This is this F15 is more complex than the F20 we've just done, but we have that main section there. Then we have our canopy section, which would be another body. Then another body would be the air intake, which is number 3 and therefore number 4 as well, um, because I think this is a clearer picture. Um, I mean, no, actually, it will. it no, hang on. Let's try that again. So we've got one conical section, which is that area there, which sort of I would even imagine it going all the way down there to as thin as possible. Then another section, which is the canopy section there, and then the third section is that air intake, because you can see the exhaust is um, it's of a different cross section, right? This is more circular, whereas that is more of a square. So you got 1, 2, 3, and 4 on each side, and that's your main fuselage, and then that would sort of get blended in with the wings. So man, military jets are way more complex to design. Oh, here's a nice picture of the 14 versus the 15. So Innocent says F14 has basically 2 separate engine nacelles with a gap between them. I believe he's talking about the front section. Yeah. So what's interesting is when I was younger in high school, I used to have these Revell and Airfix kits. So I actually made a nice F14 model about this big, which was 148 size and had an F15 as well. but that was 6 years ago, and I think I had to throw them or give them to somebody when I was moving from my boarding school to London. Um, but yeah, you never know. I've got a Spitfire waiting for me to be built, which is a 172. It's a small one, but yeah, I think these are way more complex than even what we did today. So definitely interesting to try it out next time. So if any of you who are active in the chat, or those of you who are not active in the chat either, if you'd like to recommend one of these, I will put it in the wheel, and then um, in the next live, we'll try and tackle one of them, perhaps. So if you've got a recommendation, please do let me know. But yeah, I think I'm quite happy with what we've been able to do, considering that I was absolutely unprepared. Not I wouldn't say unprepared. I was not prepared at all for this, and we were able to do this in 2 hours with such a new complex piece. Um, so thank you so much for the support. I think we'll call it a day. Um, yep, we'll call it a day. And if any of you want to join my Patreon, that'd be super, super cool, because I want to do stuff like this and tackle it more in a collaborative way. Currently, you guys can see me, but I can't see you. And what Patreon would allow us to do is actually talk while doing it. So I think that'll be really cool. And to be honest, I think, because I've been thinking about what we should do for the Patreon project, and I just can't figure something out. Um, but I think F-20 should be the aircraft we tackle in our Patreon, because it's complex enough where you have the basics from the airline tutorials, but then we take it a step further by trying and use our imagination and some more engineering tools to come up with this more complex shape. So let me know what you guys think. I want to do 1 or 2 sessions every month on our Patreon. You can join from as little as £5 a month, and you get access to loads of cool stuff. But I think the most exciting bit of that Patreon would be these Patreon session meetups. So let me know. Link should be in the description. If not, let me just have a look. Yeah. So if you're watching this live, if you just go to the description box, you can see this. The third link is subscribe to Patreon, so you can go ahead and subscribe to either bronze or silver or gold or platinum, whatever you like, and then we sort of tackle it together. I think that'd be super fun. So Ain't No Sin says, in my honest opinion, airlines are relatively easy. They're basically a cylinder with a tail and wings. 100%. 100%. And to be honest, even 3 years ago when I sort of came up with that workflow, once you had that done, you sort of, that could have been like a template on how to make literally any airliner. So anytime somebody requests me for an airliner, I'm able to make one in about 3-4 hours, and 3, 4, or 5 hours, and to quite a with a lot of detail. But this one, I feel like if I wanted to come up with a system on how to build it gradually, it'd be a lot more complex. So I currently work as a systems manager, so I'm always thinking about systems on how can we take something and replicate it in a generalized manner. So obviously things that we've already thought of today is how we can separate the main conical fuselage and then add a canopy and then the intakes, and then perhaps if it's more complex, then we have a different exhaust section as well. So yeah, thank you so much, guys, for joining. Please do like, comment, and subscribe. You can absolutely send me donations if you like. You can do that on YouTube. You can do it on PayPal. It really helps out in me trying to do better with these videos and doing them more often. I do have a full-time job where I work in an aerospace company, but everything I do on YouTube, I don't get paid for whatsoever. I do it purely out of interest and hobby, and a shared passion for 3D modeling and creativity and problem solving. So if you'd like to support me anyhow, you can join my Patreon or donate on PayPal or on YouTube, whatever you like. thank you all so much for joining. I'll hang around for about 5 minutes if anybody has any questions or something they'd like to add, because I know there's a bit of a delay between when I speak and when it reaches you, and then also when the chats come back. So I'll hang around for a bit. But in the meantime, thank you all so very much. Have a great rest of your week. Take care. Oh, speaking of which, I just got a new patron. Thank you. A gentleman known as Brad Weaver. Brad, if you are in this, oh wait, is B-Rat Dominator Brad? That would be amazing. But Brad, if you're watching, thank you very much. It's very kind of you to subscribe to my Patreon, and please do reach out. Please do reach out so we can schedule something in. I think it'd be really cool. Ah, B-Rat Dominator is Brad. Thank you so much, Brad. You're very kind. Thank you so much. Yeah, Brad, so if you just message me on Patreon or Instagram, and we can hopefully schedule something in for the coming week, maybe. I'd love to see Genius and Ain't No Saint as well. I think it'd be really nice sort of get together as well. Um, yeah, so I'll be around for a few more minutes. Please don't mind me. I'm just fulfilling my vitamin C um, dose for the day by having a easy peeler, as we call it in the UK. So those of you who are still here, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. How late is it for you? Or how early is it for you? All right, I think we'll call it a day there. Um, Again, thank you so much for joining. And hopefully I'll see you all soon. Have a great week. Take care. Bye-bye.